Hey, what's up? It's Movie Scenes and Jasmine. I'm Jasmine, and let's talk fathers. So today I'm going to be interviewing the best father in the entire world, my father, Mark Anthony Davis. So stay tuned for the interview. What's up? It's Movie Scenes and Jasmine. I'm Jasmine, and let's talk fathers. Today we are going to be interviewing my father, Mark Anthony Davis. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing fantastic. Everybody's here. All my kids are here, and I can see Jaimin, so she's technically here.
Okay.
Mike is here. Rob is here. I'm excited.
Awesome.
I couldn't be a better day.
I love that. I love that. So we wanted to take some time today to just ask you some questions, core memory, and let's just see if you can put your thinking cap on. How's that sound?
So I don't have anything too personal.
Okay.
Now, tell them my business,
We'll
Not too much.
Okay. All right. So question number one is, what is one childhood memory that shaped the kind of father you wanted to be?
Ooh, one childhood memory. This is gonna be deep, so
Yes,
y'all better get
that's
ready,
what I'm
because
going for.
I must say, when I was about 10 years old, and I was on the veranda, and we were just doing our normal, Jamaican stuff. I don't remember what we were doing, probably playing, Ludi or something.
Okay.
And somebody walked up to the gate in Waterhouse, and they came and they said, "Is your mother there?" And we all looked at them like, "Who's that?" And then I looked over to the right by the main door, and Mom came out, and her eyes were full of tears. And I said, "Who that?" And she said, "Your papa that."
Wow.
And I said, "Wow." And of course, Harold left and went into the other room, and I just stood and stared at him, and he walked in, and he started kind of crying, and she was crying, and I was a kid, so I was, about 10 years old, so I was just like watching the whole thing. And I thought to myself, I'd never seen this person in my life. And I think at that moment, later on, I reflected on that because, of course, as I told most of you, probably remember some of this, he made a lot of promises that day. He said he's going to come get us from Jamaica. Because I was thinking in Jamaica, you get your loved ones and take them to foreign, It's for a better life. So he made a lot of promises. He said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to come get you guys. I'm so sorry, blah, blah." Because he left when I was 6 months old. Right? I was 6 months old when he left and went to Maryland. And so, he had brought a lot of stuff for us. I remember it was a Star Wars watch, I'll never forget it, and a sweatsuit. And I was just like, man, he brought me all this nice, cool stuff. So I was excited as a kid that I got some new stuff, You get new stuff in Jamaica, that's rare.
Right.
And so he made a lot of promises. And he left that day, and I never saw him again until his funeral.
How old were you that day?
I was 10 years old. And so I made a vow, I think, when I became an adult, because I had a chance to talk to him again before all that. Actually, I talked to him on the phone when I was 19 or 20.
Okay.
Maybe a bit 20. It was 20. I think I called my grandma, which was his mother on his side in Maryland, Rima, Grandma Rima.
Love her.
And I said, "Grandma Rima, I want to come by and see you, because I was trying to get to know his side, because I didn't know them. I called him. I think it was Father's Day.
Wow.
I think it was Father's Day, and I called him. Because I was like, okay, maybe, by this, I think a lot of the anger that had happened from 10 to 20, I kind of resolved a little bit, or, it kind of calmed down, I guess, because I was angry for a while.
Right.
And so I said, you know what, I need to try. This is my dad. I need to try, right? So I called him and I talked to him. I said, "Hey, man, I want to come to Maryland and see you." And he's like, "Yeah, man, that would be nice, blah, blah, blah." And then when I called Grandma, I asked her, I said, "Grandma, so what's a good time?" And she was like, "You can come anytime." But then when the way she said it, I kind of felt like he didn't want to, so I tried to call him back. Never got a hold of him. So I just backed off. I never really tried anymore. But I made a resolve then. I said, I never want to be that kind of father.
Wow.
And I think that's where it started. I said, I want to be the kind of father that's present. I may not be able to, give them everything they want. Like my mom couldn't give us everything we wanted, but she was present. She was always there, I mean, tough times, good times, bad times. I never remember a time when mom wasn't there, right? I mean, even with all the stuff that went on in Jamaica, I remember most of it. So I think that shaped me more than anything else. To see him come, made a lot of promises and didn't fulfill it, and never really fulfill any of his father responsibility. I remember now, it wasn't just me, it was three of us. Right? It was Marvlet, Sandra, and me, because Dwight wasn't born yet,
Okay, well, as your daughter, I would say that you've definitely done that in strides. You've always been present, and the list goes on. But you having that background of an absent father, you couldn't be more present. So
thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So that actually is a beautiful segue into our next question. Number 2 is, from growing up into Jamaica to coming to America, is there a part of you that wishes that you stayed in Jamaica to raise us?
Ooh.
And mom came somehow.
We couldn't still shoot. Well, I had you guys when I was here now. So you mean go back to Jamaica to raise you? Is that what you mean by that?
Let's say that somehow you met
mom in Jamaica.
And then y'all stayed there some kind of way. Would you have, knowing what you know now, would you have wished you stayed there, or are you glad that you came to America?
That's a good question. I probably want to raise my family in Jamaica.
Really?
Yeah, because that's home for me, right?
Yeah.
I could navigate it. Obviously, I would want to be better off financially.
Right.
So I'd probably marry a rich girl from Red Hills. Probably. You live in Red Hills?
Same mother now. Same mother. Somehow she got there. I don't know.
No, yeah, I think I would have survived it because knowing what I know now, I think I could have navigated with mom and raised a family in Jamaica. Would have been tough, yeah. Okay. I think raising a family in Jamaica, unless you have a lot of money, is difficult. There's no doubt about it. Especially if if it's in Kingston and you don't have a lot of money. You'd raise the family and you do the best you can.
Right.
But would it be better to raise a family in America? Absolutely. America is a developed country, with a lot more opportunities and resources. But going back to me, I'd have to do it in Jamaica because that's home for me, right? I mean, I look back now and some days and I say, man, I wish I just kind of stayed in Jamaica and make it work. But no, it's. I think sometimes the destiny is destiny, right?
Right.
And I think we were destined to be where we are, and so, I don't have any regrets, having to raise you guys here, because what I maybe have regret was that to have you spend more time in Jamaica, so you had an opportunity, as John would say, know the culture a little better.
Right.
That's definitely something I probably would have done differently, because I think it's so important to know your culture and know where you're from. Like, I know a lot of Jamaicans that don't know that. They was born there, but they left there when they were 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So I thank God that I spent my adult, at least when I was adult, right? My childhood there for sure.
Right.
And then, I was an adult when I left, but I had a chance to really be a Jamaican for 18 years, And so I'm solidly rooted in my culture because I spent all my, growing up years there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next wonderful question is, can you name one specific moment in your life that you truly felt proud to be a father? Now, exclude my birth, because I know that's the most important, but a specific moment, in all seriousness, that you really felt like, wow, I'm proud to be a dad in this moment. Can you think of that?
Ooh, well, there's a lot, really. Let's say one specific moment. Do you want me to go when you were kids or when you were grown, or does it matter?
Wherever you want to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the times when I kind of recall being proud is to see y'all doing different things.
Okay.
Like I would see Jaimin doing her not acting, we call it performance art, the performance art stuff. I mess it up sometimes.
Yes.
You were doing that too. Michael was doing sports and music. I think when I see you guys in your elements, because y'all really didn't do anything I did. Think about it. Micah never really played soccer, right? You guys didn't really do anything like volleyball, right? That's my thing, right? And so when I see you guys doing the things that seem like you love,
Yeah.
it made me proud because I'm like, those are my kids doing their thing.
Okay.
And it's not what I wanted them to do. Because if it was for me, I'd have you playing soccer and volleyball, and you know what I'm saying? Because that was my passion, you know. So I think that those are the best memory I have is seeing you guys in your element, and then obviously holiday times when we're all together, and we'll be reading Luke chapter 2, just sitting down in the living room like we always do, and just talking about our Thanksgiving dinner. We always say something that we're thankful for.
Right.
And I hear y'all saying, I'm thankful for family, or I'm thankful for blah, blah, blah. I think those are the moments for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. So what is something that you think every father should do on a daily basis to stay right mentally? That's a little bit fun. But what's something that you would recommend as a father of 34 years?
Yeah.
Something to do.
Yes, that's a very good question and very, very important. For me, obviously, I spend time meditating, and I spend time just kind of, for me, it's in the Word every day. I listen to the Word going to work every day. I think just having a time for yourself where it's not about the family, it's not about work, it's not about your spouses. It's just kind of just to meditate. And for me to just spend a little time with the Word or spend time talking to God, that helped me mentally, because life is really so busy. Life is busy. Life can be stressful, you know, especially when we had kids growing up. You know, you guys, not that you're great kids, but the pressure of having to provide and make sure your family was good. It was tough on both of us because, you know, we wanted the best for you guys. And so I look back now and say, man, I'm glad that I had some outlets. And for me, if it was, whether it be volleyball or soccer or just, you know, the time just spending just with myself, meditating, I think that's important, because as I get older, I realize how important mental health is, because life is going to be life, and life is going to keep lifing. And you can't be the best you if you're not mentally tough or mentally together, right? If you're drained, like I was telling you, if your battery is drained, you're not going to help anybody, you know? And I remember times when I was drained and didn't know I was drained because I was just too busy doing life, trying to make things happen, trying to survive, so to speak. And I wouldn't do the things I just said. I wouldn't take the time to feed myself spiritually. I was feeding everybody else. And that looking back now, I said, why was I so down, or why was I so drained? That's because you could never pour from an empty vessel.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
This is sort of an extra question. So why do you think it's so difficult for specifically Black men to speak on, like, when they are drained or when they need help? Why do you think it's difficult?
I know exactly why. You know, most men, especially Black men, we grew up with the idea that we should be tough and you shouldn't show weakness. I heard Shaq say something the other day that just kind of like, what's wrong with that boy? Shaq said that he only cried 3 times in his life. And he talked about the 3 people that he loved, his mother, I think his sister, and somebody else had passed away, and he cried. And because he was saying something to somebody and he was tearing up. And he said, no, I'm not tearing up. I got allergies or something like he said. But we grew up like that. I grew up like that, where you don't show that you're weak. You don't show emotions. You don't show, you're supposed to be strong,
Yeah.
And no, that's not true at all, right? That's not true at all. All of us have situation where we need somebody, and we need to be vulnerable. And the older I've gotten is the more, thank God I have a spouse where I can be vulnerable with Tracy, and she can be vulnerable with me, because you need somebody.
Right.
You don't have to be vulnerable to everybody, because you got to be careful about that, right? But you do have to find somebody where you could just be yourself. That's why there's some friendship I've cherished over the years. And even though we're not in the same city anymore, I've cherished some friendship because I feel like I could tell those folks anything. If I was going through something, I could tell them, and I know that it's not going to be blubber across the internet, so to speak, or whatever. But I needed a place where I could release without feeling judged or feeling, and black men sometimes don't have those folks, right? Because we tend to live in this isolation, like I got it, and no man is an island, right? So we got to change that, and I'm seeing the change now in our culture. To be honest with you, we were seeing more men, especially black men, be more vulnerable,
right.
and proud of it. And so I think that's a trend that must continue. If not, our race is going to suffer as a result.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, if you could pass down one lesson down to us as your children about fatherhood, what would it be?
Ooh. Well, obviously, I could pass on a whole bunch, but
yes, you could.
if I may give one or two,
Sure.
because that's such a good question. I would pass down the importance of leaving a legacy. I don't think I did that very well, or we have done that very well, because we're trying to survive, right? And I think as the generation gets better equipped, better resourced, better all that stuff, I think it's important to leave a legacy. The Bible talks about that. And like, for example, I always say, looking back now, I would have done the 501, whatever, not the 501, but the 529. I would have sacrificed and put some money away because I knew that I wanted y'all to go to college, but I didn't plan for it. And I'm thinking, you got to plan for things you know is going to happen, right? If you have the desire for your kids to be X, Y, and Z, you got to plan for those things, whatever they are, right? And so I'd say you got to plan to leave a legacy, and then you got to leave some fundamental things that's non-negotiable. Like taking care of yourself. I tell people all the time, you can't wait till you're 40 to start eating right and exercising and do mental stuff. You're in trouble if you wait till you're 40. You got to do it at 20 and 30, or sooner the better, but at least in those years, because in those years, you're doing a lot of stuff. And so if you don't form those patterns and those discipline, when you get to 40 and 50 and you're fighting all of the different challenges of life, and you're trying to maintain things that you should have had as a habit. But think about if you establish them as a habit and it's a part of who you are, then you're cruising when you get to that point, meaning you make sure you're taking care of your finances and your health and all the things that I'm referring to.
Right.
Then as you move into the years, you're maintaining, and now you're leaving a legacy because you've got to the point now where you can help somebody else, and you're not just in survival mode. I think our culture has looked at life so much as survival mode, and sometimes because we had to, like mom had to, $32 a week, she was just in survival mode my whole life.
Wow.
And I saw that and said, I don't want it to be me. And then I found myself in survival mode many years because we don't plan as we should. So I think that's key.
Okay, so leaving a legacy.
Leaving a legacy.
Okay, well, I think you're already on that trajectory, so don't never downgrade that. Look at us.
Amen. Amen. That's for sure.
So that is the end of my questions. So is there anything that you want our viewers to know, on this wonderful Father's Day?
Yeah, if I was to pick one, I would say be present. I was telling mom the other day, I said, I enjoyed going to the different things that you guys were having. I mean, I couldn't go to all of them, but I remember every chance I got, I would go and be with volleyball with Micah.
Yeah.
whether it be the performances and whether it be just anything. I would drive you guys to the prom, and I would want to stay there and watch what's going on. Where them guys are at, you know.
Part 2 coming.
I just want to be present because, you know, I think my dad wasn't present, obviously, but it's not just my dad. There's so many dads that aren't present for different reasons, obviously.
Right.
But I think you have to be present. And because by present, I don't mean you have to be able to provide everything, because nobody can do that. But I think when kids look back, I think what they'll appreciate the most is that you were present and that you were there. And so I've loved that about all the stories I've heard, whether the dad was really good or they weren't that good or they were somewhat good. But the fact that they were there and tried their best to be the best they can, because, you know, all of us have faults and challenges, but if you give it your best and you're present, that's all most people could ask, you know. And I try to do that the best I could.
I think you do amazing. So, you heard it here first. Yes, claps in the chat there. Hey, chat. Thank you for 50 gifted. So, on behalf of all of your children, I'm firstborn, so I speak for you guys. Happy Father's Day, Dad. We love you, and we should do this more often.
We definitely should, because y'all need to know some history about the Cunningham Sherwood family.
All right, cut the check, and that's a wrap.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you. Man, I thought you were going to do more questions. Man, I was ready for more.
No, I know you. We got to talk on that.